Jeff, you kind of inherited positive energy because you weren't at CAP, I don't think, or at least not in the role you have now when the organization committed to positive energy. So maybe a little unfair to ask the question of you, but really curious to hear your thoughts.
Well, I didn't sign the first check, but I signed the subsequent one, so I figure I'm just as invested. No, we're very pleased to support the initiative, and even if I had been part of that initial decision, we would have carried on, because I think there are three things that we saw value in the proposition of this project. You know, and the first one was for industry to be at the table. We think that it's absolutely critical to have discussions around energy and all the corollary issues around that. That includes industry. We're not a bystander in this. We are a shaper and a leader in policy and technology and in public opinion going forward. So it's essential that we have a role at the table. And so I appreciate to be part of that. And two, the points that my other colleagues have said is the openness, the convening of multitude of voices. It would be really nice to come to conferences like this where everyone supports oil and gas. I respect that there is a diversity of views. That's essential. That reflects our society. And as I said, it's important for us to be at the table, but it's important that we have places like this where it is respectful, where we can learn and listen, where we can be vulnerable, where I can be an oil and gas executive and question what is our industry's future in Canada's energy mix and the world energy mix, and not have to just do the standard defend and advocate for my industry, and hope that others do the same, that we come with 2 ears and 1 mouth and use in proportion. And I think it's important for that because as I tell folks in our industry, our board and our boardrooms at home back in Calgary, you know, whether we like it or not, the future of energy policy that will affect oil and natural gas development, pipeline development, environmental policy in this country is designed outside of our operating jurisdictions. Our industry depends on public opinion and, by extension, political opinion, and what people in Markham think, and what people in Montreal think, what people in Maple Ridge think, people that will never see a pump jack, people in whose community they will never put on the hard hats and the boots to go work on a rig or in a mine. And we have to recognize that. So part of that is for industry to be open to understand our issues and our industry, even though the resources are not broadly distributed across Canada, the debate, the discussion, the future policy of it is, and we need to be engaged in that. And so I think the ability to kind of explore a lot of these issues without defending them, but exploring to learn is absolutely critical. And the third point, kind of building on what Richard said here, is, you know, the content, the ability to inform policymakers, thinkers, and communicators about an incredibly complex industry that I know in the media, in social media, among opponents, it's easy to boil down to a simple, we can just substitute, life will go on, technologically, we can do it economically, there is no pain. There is no energy transition in this country, there's no energy transition in this world that will be fast, easy, or cheap. And so the ability to actually dig in places like this, where we know we need to carry that message and that conversation out, but that we can have a bit of that here, I think is absolutely essential. So that was all the reasons why we signed up. Those are all the reasons we stayed. But a lot has changed in 3 years. And I think we've heard this about the pace of change, the pace of disruption, the acceleration of that, from technology to media to politics. When I look just in our industry as what has changed in 3 years, we've lost $85 billion of projects that have been canceled or scuttled. We have lost 1 in 5 jobs in this industry. More than 100,000 Canadians that used to work in oil and gas 3 years ago don't today. We've seen the value to the Canadian economy. Somebody talked about the balance of trade earlier. Used to lead this country for a decade. We're still sputtering along in number 2. But the value, the contribution to the Canadian economy has taken a substantive hit. And governments are feeling the pinch. Households are feeling the pinch. And our future economy will feel the pinch unless we can find a way to reconcile and revive and reinvigorate that. And we've seen political change and disruption that causes perhaps more questions then provides more clarity about what is our path forward. And I think, so when I think of what the value of this project means going forward, there are three things I see essential. Because, we're trying to reform the plane or adjust the plane or change the system. We're rebuilding the plane in mid-flight. We don't have the luxury of landing, redesigning it perfectly, putting it back up in the air. We're doing all of this real time. And there are households, there are regions of this country, there are economies that are gravely at stake if we get it wrong. So I think the opportunity for us is really to kind of keep up with that tremendous pace of change, that uncertainty, that ambiguity. We're never going to know everything. And so we have to kind of continue to lead through change, through uncertainty, with conviction and vision and clarity, because the consequences are so great. So I think there are kind of three things as I see going forward that I would encourage us to remain involved and for this project to continue forward. One of them is to act with a sense of urgency. As I said, there are real-time impacts to what's going on, particularly in oil and gas. The confidence in Canada as a place to invest. We've seen institutions just last week announce that of all the OECD countries around the world, where can you get things built? Canada ranked 34th out of 35 for building major projects, including energy infrastructure projects. When we talk about a vision of the country, is that where we want to be? Known as the place where projects go to die, where economic development doesn't occur, where we seek to have such little impact that we have no impact in terms of our economy. So there's an urgency, I think, that we need to act with. Two, we talk about a shared narrative, and we've heard it emerging. I think we need to challenge the conventions of some things, because our research would show to us that despite all of this, public support and opinion for pipelines, for oil sands, for natural gas development, for us being an energy exporter, not just an energy consumer. When you look at the changing trade relationship with the United States, our number one, in fact, our only energy customer, has changed so much in the last 3 years that we need to kind of broaden and take a different look at where we are. So our narrative needs to change, but the one thing that I would say is we're still not finding common ground. Because what I continue to hear about is energy substitution, one that can leave some parts of our energy economy or some parts of our Canadian economy, some geographies of our country behind. That is not going to fly in this country. We can find a way to be united to get off emissions, not necessarily off the fuel. And I believe that innovation and technology has enabled us to extract value from these resources in the past and will allow us to continue to do it, because oil and natural gas are growing in the world, and Canada's role in that can grow, and can grow in a leadership way through innovation and technology. And the third and final one is there's been a lot of talk about information. Well, if only Canadians were more informed, if only more information were available. I live in an information world. I can tell you Canadians are drowning in information. There's not an absence of it. It's does it connect with the values of Canadians, of what they want today and what they want for the future. There is an abundance of information if you look for it. We can always share it better, but I think it's too much of a panacea if we said, oh, if only we had the right fact. There is no fact, there is no ad, there is no tweet, there is no media headline that will change this, because our debates around energy in this country are not just about energy. There are a lot of non-energy issues that cloud and obfuscate that. And I think our opportunity is to find what are the values there that are creating barriers, not just the information. Information is critical, but if you don't connect with people on their values about energy and our economy and our environment going forward, the information won't even be consumed in the first place. So I think this is a great project to deal with urgency, narrative, and the leadership to connect with Canadians on a values basis, not just an information basis. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Jeff.